What is up, Karatics? Welcome to off-road capability testing for the new Canis Seminole Frontier. This off-road test is an update to my off-road capability testing series where I've tested the majority of off-road capable vehicles in GTA Online. I'll leave a link to a playlist down below in the pinned comment where you will find all the other vehicles I have done already so that you can compare. If you're wondering if I've tested a certain vehicle already, please select that first before asking. So before we start, if you have any questions as to how each obstacle is scored in full detail, please refer to the tutorial video which is linked in the pinned comment. Also remember that the most updated spreadsheet with all the capability scores for vehicles I have tested so far will be linked in the pinned comment as well. The following points for each obstacle will be out of 10 possible points. The Seminole Frontier is fully customized with bumper and exhaust options that provide the most ground clearance and also has stock suspension. Also keep in mind that it is in the SUVs class, not in the off-roads class. Again, if you have any questions as to how each obstacle is scored in full detail, please refer to the tutorial video which is linked in the pinned comment. Starting off with the incline test from a flat surface, the Seminole barely has any power/torque, really making it suffer to go up this obstacle. It gets a 3.5 out of 10 according to the markers. In stage 2 of this test, where it started at an angled position, it struggles even more and actually has wheel spin. However, it regains traction and makes it to red block number 4, giving it a 4 out of 10. If we take both those scores, we get an average of 3.75 for the incline test, which is well below the average. This vehicle really does lack in terms of power. Next, we have the dirt incline test. The Seminole does struggle a bit in terms of traction and power. However, it still makes it to the top, which gives it a 10 out of 10. Dirt braking is pretty average for the Seminole. It barely stops before the last red block, but it still stops before it, so according to the markers, it gets a 10 out of 10. Rock crawling for the Seminole Frontier is not too great. Through all 3 obstacles, it unfortunately bottoms out a total of 8 times due to its low ground clearance in combination with its wheelbase, which gives it a 2 out of 10. However, in stage 2 of this test, which is subjectively scored, it has no hesitation over the first 2 obstacles, but it does have issues with the last obstacle due to its ground clearance and some wheel spin as well. The most I can give it is a 7 out of 10. If we take both those scores, we get an average of 4.5 out of 10 for the rock crawling test, which is a below average score. Again, it really suffers in terms of ground clearance and tire grip in some situations. Powertrain is decent, as we really only see wheel spin from the driver's side rear wheel. However, it does start going back down due to the lack of power and tire grip, so unfortunately I have to knock it some points. It's going to get a 7 out of 10 for this test. Next up, we have bumper clearance. It surprisingly only scrapes once on the rear bumper. Unfortunately, there are no custom rear bumper options for the Seminole, which could have possibly given us more clearance like the front bumper does. But anyways, it gets a 9 out of 10 for this test. Suspension travel was below the average of most vehicles tested here. According to the markers, it gets a 5 out of 10. High-speed stability is unfortunately very poor. This is the case with most SUVs in the class. It gets a 5 out of 10. Next up, we have deep water testing. And this is where the Seminole does suffer quite a bit. In stage 1, it gets really close to making it to the end, but unfortunately, it doesn't. It gets right up to red block number 8, which gives it an 8 out of 10. In stage 2, which is the deeper side, it dies right at red block number 7, which gives it a 7 out of 10. If we take both those scores, we get an average of 7.5 for the deep water test, which is below the average of most vehicles tested here. And finally, we have the dirt acceleration test. This path is exactly a quarter mile long. Using the handbrake launch, it gets a very slow 16-second quarter mile. It seems to be really slow on dirt. This gives it a 4 out of 10. Add it all together and the off-road capability score is 65.75 out of 100. So for being an off-road vehicle in the SUVs class, it is pretty decent. For the SUVs class, you can see it here in 4th place, which is not too bad. Now, if we compare it to the Canis brand vehicles I have tested so far, that places it here in 4th place, which makes sense as I think we all knew it wasn't going to be able to beat the Merryweather Mesa in 3rd place. But at least I'm happy to see that it was able to beat the regular Seminole in 10th place. Now, if we compare it to all the vehicles I've tested so far from all the different classes, that places it here in 28th place, which is pretty bad, let's be honest. But considering the fact that it is an SUV, I don't think it's that bad. And one thing I wanted to point out here is that you can see that the Seminole Frontier, the Brawler, and the Comet Safari all get the same final score. But what I think is really cool is that if we compare their detailed scores here, you can see how different they really are. The Seminole mainly suffers in the Incline Test and the Dirt Acceleration Test due to its lack of power. The Brawler mainly suffers in terms of braking, and of course the Incline Test due to its lack of traction. And then the Comet Safari mainly suffers in terms of suspension travel, which is pretty funny, and in terms of powertrain. So I think it's kind of cool to see that even though these vehicles are very different, because of their differences in terms of their performance on certain obstacles, they still end up with the same final score, which I think really shows the variety of obstacles in these tests that truly allow the vehicles to prove each of their strengths. All in all, the Seminole is not really that great of a choice for off-roading, mainly due to its lack of power and stability over bumps. The Seminole Frontier costs about $900,000 with upgrades, but that's pretty expensive for an off-road SUV that doesn't really perform that well. And that's mainly what it was made for, as it's really not that fast, so it's more of a off-road SUV than a performance SUV. So, is it worth buying? Well, I personally believe it's not worth the money. Like I stated, most SUVs coming out now are more focused on performance, like the Tauros, the Novak, Rebel GTS, and not so much on off-roading. But anyways, I think the styling and customization for the Seminole is pretty good, but I'd personally not take it off-roading, as there are much better options out there for much cheaper prices. Well, that's it guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Again, if I could see the other videos on the other vehicles I've tested so far and how the Canis Seminole Frontier compares to all the other ones, I will leave the link to the playlist down below in the pinned comment, as well as a spreadsheet which will contain the most updated breakdown and scores for all vehicles in one place. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you in the next one.